April 2014, Oakland, California, in the United States of America, home to 23-year-old Kimberly Robertson. She was a mother. Her daughter, not yet 3 years old, was the center of her world. She was also a student, enrolled in a criminal justice program at Heald College in San Francisco, working toward a career, building a future she could hand down to her child. By April 2014, she had been in Oakland just 6 months. On the night of April 4th, Kimberly was out with her boyfriend at the Lakeside Lounge on East 18th Street near Lake Merritt. They were drinking. At some point, the two got into an argument. Kimberly walked out. She made her way to a nearby bus stop at East 18th and Park Boulevard, alone in the early hours of the morning. It would be the last decision she was ever seen making of her own free will. Sometime in those early morning hours, a red Toyota 4Runner pulled up. Kimberly got in. No one saw exactly why. No one saw exactly how. But for the rest of that night, Kimberly Robertson disappeared from the lives of everyone who knew her. At 6:40 a.m., a passerby found her, beaten, partially undressed. Her purse strap had been cut twice, her phone, her jewelry, her cash, gone. The autopsy would later reveal a fractured skull, bruising across her body, and defensive wounds on her hands and forearms, signs she had fought for her life. Evidence pointed to a sexual assault. It didn't take long for investigators to rule it what it was: a homicide. Oakland police turned to the one thing that doesn't argue, doesn't lie, and doesn't forget: surveillance video. When Kimberly still hadn't returned home, her sister assumed that she had stayed at her boyfriend's, but soon everything would come crashing down. Detectives informed her that a body had been found. It was that of her sister Kimberly. She was utterly devastated and didn't know of anyone who would want to hurt Kimberly, let alone kill her. But she was adamant about one thing: Kimberly's boyfriend, Danny, would not be the person responsible. Danny was quickly brought in to be questioned. He was calm and told the officers they hadn't been dating long, but they had been friends for a few months. The pair had been drinking the night before at the Lakeside Lounge at 338 East 18th Street. He said that after drinking that night, he didn't want either one of them driving home. Kimberly disagreed and an argument ensued between the two of them. He called a taxi, but Kimberly walked away telling him she would get herself home. Danny didn't want to leave her, so left the taxi and got in his car. He drove and parked opposite from where she was, stood at a bus stop, and decided to wait it out. He told the officers that he fell asleep, and when he woke up later, she was no longer at the bus stop. As the officers looked into his story, they got the result of the preliminary autopsy. Back, she had suffered massive head injuries and a brain hemorrhage. She had also been the victim of a sexual assault. Tributes were left to Kimberly on her Facebook page, many in complete shock at her death. One person wrote, "It's hard to smile knowing you're gone, but my heart is smiling inside because I know you're in a far better place than this cold world." As the investigation into Kimberly Robertson's murder continued, the police needed witnesses from the Lakeside Lounge, so they headed over to try and piece the previous evening together. It was here that they found witnesses that could reveal everything. Security cameras, the camera from outside, showed the pair going into the Lakeside Lounge at 11:30 p.m. The pair didn't speak and barely even acknowledged one. Music another. Danny was then filmed talking to two women. As Kimberly went on her phone, there was an obvious tension between the couple. More footage captured them as they walked through the club. They were then seen leaving the club with a male at 1:15 a.m. They asked Kimberly's sister, and she was able to positively identify the man as being one of Danny's friends. He was brought in by the police and told them he had indeed been with them and had taken them back to the parking lot at 1:24 a.m., where their car had been parked, and the officers could not believe their look. When they went to the parking lot, they discovered it was next to a Walgreens, and this Walgreens had security cameras. The footage began to play from 1:24 a.m. They watched for more than 20 minutes with no sign of them. Then at 1:50 a.m., a taxi pulled up. Danny was seen getting in, and then Kimberly walked up to the vehicle and got into the passenger side. 30 seconds went by and the car was stationary before Kimberly got out and walked away. The taxi then drove off with Danny a view. From another camera showed Kimberly getting out of the cab and walking back into the parking lot. 1 minute later, the taxi came back. It wasn't clear what was happening, but the police believed that Danny was scanning the parking lot to try and find Music Her. The cab then left again before returning 2 minutes later. Danny got out and the taxi left. but there was no sign of Kimberly anywhere. Music just after 2 a.m. The camera caught something. Leaving the parking lot was a black SUV. It was Danny. His story was checking out. The officers drove to the bus stop where Danny said Kimberly had been waiting before he fell asleep. Thankfully, this area too was covered by cameras. His vehicle was seen pulling up just like he had said he parked opposite the bus stop. The car stayed there all night and he didn't get out until 6:18 a.m. Danny had been telling the truth. His alibi checked out. He had not been the one to murder Kimberly. So who had the CCTV from the bank that covered Danny's SUV that night also picked up the reflection of the bus stop, and Kimberly could just about be made out at 2:05 a.m. Just a few minutes after Danny pulled up, a red Toyota 4Runner SUV was spotted driving past the bus stop on the other side of the road to Danny's vehicle. It then turned around and drove back down the road. When they wound the footage back, they realized something. This was not the first time this vehicle had driven up and down this road. It had done it several times and circled the bus stop where Kimberly was. This was very unusual and concerning behavior from the driver. Then the reflection of the bus stop seen on the footage showed something truly disturbing. The car had stopped at the bus stop, and someone stood there, was seen talking to the driver before getting in the car, then did a U-turn and drove back past Danny's car, showing someone in the passenger seat. The police had a horrible feeling it was Kimberly. The footage was unable to clearly show the license plate. So investigators asked around, hoping that this was someone Kimberly knew, and that someone in her life would know the car and therefore the driver. But nobody did. The next place to look was the F.M. Smith Recreation Center, where her body had been found. Just like all the other places, this too had surveillance cameras. They began watching the footage from 2:30 a.m., hoping to spot the red Toyota. And at 3, the car was seen driving down the road. But so frustratingly, this footage still did not show the license plate clearly. Although the footage was incredibly helpful, it still wasn't enough, so the officers decided to take a different route. One piece of evidence that had been found at the crime scene was the receipt. It was a receipt for a Lowe's home improvement store from the 23rd of March at 6:02 p.m. This store was 100 meters away from where Kimberly had been found. The police called the store, hoping and praying they would still have the footage from 2 weeks ago. But this, by anyone's standards, was a long shot. Unbelievably, the store did 5:37 p.m., March 23, 2014. The red Toyota 4Runner SUV was captured in the parking lot out of the store. It parked up, 2 men got out, and walked into the store. Footage from the check account had showed that the goods had been paid for by card. This card was traced to a 53-year-old woman, meaning it was potentially stolen. Records showed that the card had been used just 3 hours later at a fast food restaurant. As the red Toyota 4Runner pulled in, they finally had an image of the driver. But much to the frustration of the police, the license plate was still too blurry. But then the fast food worker at the restaurant told them they could pull up footage from the rear camera, which was clearer. And there it was, the license plate. It was traced to a man living in Oakland. His name was Prince Chehash, but he went by Frank. He was originally from Ghana and had moved to Oakland in 2007. He was 41 years old, sold clothes at local farmers markets, was married and a father of 3. Checks soon revealed that the passenger had actually been in custody when Kimberly was killed, so he was instantly ruled out. All eyes were now on Frank. They needed to prove that he was the man responsible for Kimberly's rape and murder. So using undercover cameras, they took flyers around his neighborhood and asked people for information. They then knocked on apartment 8 Frank's door. They told him they were in the neighborhood and investigating the recent murder of a young woman. The officer showed him a flyer and asked if he had seen the woman before or knew her at all. Bearing in mind the officers already knew that she had been in his car, he looked at the flyer and said no, he didn't know her, and he hadn't seen her in the area. They told him that, should he remember anything or recall seeing her, he needed to contact the Oakland Police Department. The officer double-checked the man's name and he confirmed who he was. He was the man in the footage. His denial that he even knew her when they knew she had been in his car finally gave the officers enough to place him under arrest. He was taken in to be interviewed 5 days after her body was found. He now had to explain himself. Why had he been suspiciously driving around on the night Kimberly was killed? He was arrested within days and booked into Santa Rita jail. held without bail. Detectives brought him in, and Tsetse denied it, flatly and more than once. "I didn't kill this woman. All I had was sex with her." He admitted to picking Kimberly up. He admitted to driving her to a residential street. He admitted, eventually, to having sex with her in the back seat of his 4Runner. But he insisted he dropped her off alive, at the very spot where her body would later be found, and drove away. She told me she was working. She offered for money. I'd just had a fight with my wife. She said she didn't want to see me anymore, that I'd been unfaithful. I wasn't thinking straight, so I paid her. That's all that happened. I didn't touch her, not like that. It was not, by his own account, an act of affection. It was impulsive, transactional. A bad decision made in the middle of a worse night. But a decision, he maintained, that ended with him driving away, not with her death. Prosecutors saw it differently. They pointed to DNA and blood evidence linking him to the assault. They pointed to the surveillance footage of his SUV circling the pickup point. They pointed to the fact that he was, by his own admission, the last person to see her alive, and that he dropped her at the exact location where she was later found dead. The defense pushed back. Another man's DNA was also found on Kimberly, a man never identified, never located. Reasonable doubt, they argued. No eyewitness had seen a murder. The timeline, they said, didn't add up. The jury didn't need long. Less than 2 hours of deliberation. On November 25, 2015, they convicted Prince Tsetse of first-degree murder, with the special circumstance of murder committed during a rape. They came to the conclusion that you were just lying, and you perjured yourself. They decided that you raped and killed her. Tsetse was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He never confessed. To the end, he told the court, "I didn't do this. I've been convicted for a crime I didn't do." Kimberly's sister, Marquita Martin, had the final word for him in that courtroom. "You had a choice. You didn't have to kill her. I can never replace my sister. My life will never be the same." Kimberly Robertson came to Oakland for a better life, for herself and for her daughter. What the cameras caught that night wasn't her killer's hand. It was only the outline of a pattern, a car circling in the dark. It took a jury, a trial, and 18 months to fill in the rest.